Hi guys, in this video I'm going to break down what I think is the best Crusher Stampede list that you can play in competitive play today. Hi guys, Aceface back with another video for you today for Twisted Dice, and I'm here with some Tyranid tactics. I know it's been a little while, so apologies. We've been super busy in the studio creating some amazing battle reports, and if you haven't already, please do check some of our brand new battle reports because they have we have raised the game tenfold, and they are some of the best battle reports out there. So if you have watched them in the past, just why not try one of our new battle reports, because they are quick, punchy, with absolute tons of tech involved. So definitely check out one of our battle reports if you haven't already. And while you're at it as well, if you could give us a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, it helps us out tons. And so many of you watch the videos, aren't subscribed. Just for a little button, just helps us out loads and loads and loads, and grows and shares a lot of love. And if you want to support us further, you can become a Patreon and be part of an awesome Discord server. We also have in the description below affiliation links to our sponsors, so do check them out and buy through those guys. If you do, it gives us a kickback and you can get some awesome products at great prices. But anyway, let's jump into this video and talk a little bit about the Crusher Stampede and why I believe that I have created the best Crusher Stampede list out there today. So what we're going to do is we're not going to go into huge amounts of detail on the Crusher Stampede because there's loads out there already. You probably know what it does. I have a video on it as well, so you can check out that video if you're not sure. But the Crusher Stampede, incredibly powerful. And I have taken this now to two large tournaments, one super major and a huge international team tournament as well. And in all of those games, I have just lost two games, one to Custodes and one to Tau. Both those games I were in it and could have potentially turned that result round with a bit more experience playing into those armies. They are still the toughest for this list, but they are absolutely playable. So, you know, you're in with a shout if you play it right. So I'm going to break down the individual units. I'm going to put the list up on the screen so you can see what the list is, and I'm going to break down the individual units and tell you exactly what they do and what makes them so good. So what we've got is we have just one detachment. In that detachment, I have a flying Hive Tyrant. He has got the monstrous size, or I think it's called monstrous size. So basically, that's going to buff up his melee even more, make him even more tanky, well not tanky, make him even more nasty. So he's going to be doing a flat 4 damage on his Scything Talons. He has also got the -1 to wound Relic. That makes him so much more survivable at toughness 7, because going off at a slight tangent, if you're building your Crusher Stampede, you want to be trying to build around the survivability because everything is so killy in the game. Your break points for that survivability is toughness 8. If you're not taking toughness 8, you need to make sure your toughness 7 is super survivable in one way or other. Either you're going to hide it or it's going to have buffs to make it survivable. These are the things, or it's very, very cheap. Otherwise, you want to be taking toughness 8. If you're taking a lot of toughness 7, you're doing it wrong, which is why, unfortunately, Carnifexes don't really work in Crusher because, you know, you want the higher toughness. So, as I diverge slightly, in the second HQ slot, we have the Swarmlord. Obviously, the Swarmlord is there to give out those amazing buffs. He has a 4-up invulnerable save. He generally hides most of the game, but when he needs to late game, he can really get in there with a devastating melee attack if he needs to. Into troops, I just have one singular troop, which is a unit of warriors. Those warriors are the bare bone basics. They have got Death Spitters, mainly because I have that on the model. I think if I needed to save points, I'd even go to Devourers because they don't even really ever get into play. They mainly just hide in the backfield. They have got Bio Bonds. They will be able to give out one unit a +1 to hit, both in melee and in shooting as well. So they have a very good use. Sometimes you don't need them, and I'll go on to why, but it's still handy to have them. They can often sit and they can do an action if they need to, and you know, they can grab an objective, and they can be a useful unit. Then we have the Hive Guard. Of course we have the Hive Guard. 6 of these guys. They're the heavy lifters. They still do probably the most damage. They're very hard to interact with because on the whole they will hide and give out a devastating blow to anybody. Because the detachment's Leviathan, you still have all the goodness of the Leviathan tree to play with. And my Hive Tyrant has obviously got the Chapter Master reroll, so in early game I make full use of the full rerolls on these guys. They are absolutely devastating. So everyone knows what they do, so we'll move on fairly swiftly from that. We also have a harespex. Now the harespex is a very new unit to some Crusher Stampede lists, and the reason why he is now so good is one, he got a points decrease, two, he has that magic toughness 8 which makes him pretty survivable with a 5+ invulnerable save because of Crusher Stampede, but also because we now have ways to make him more effective at hitting, so you can use the Warrior Bio Bond to give him +1 to hit. You can also put the psychic power on him for D3 additional attacks as well. And because the way that the harespex attacks work, you roll a D3 for each attack he has, he can actually have a huge volume of attacks that can do quite a bit of damage. So he's a really good unit. He suffers that his speed is not as quick as some of the other units, but the way the list plays is in layers, as you always should. Thinking about your cap strategy, that I've talked about so much in the past, you want to play in layers and you want things in the mid-board taking control. You don't always want everything so quick that it's in their face, and you don't want everything so slow it's sitting at the back. You need the balance to be able to really function in a 9th edition game, and he does that extremely, extremely well. They're in fast attack. What we have in fast attack is we have the Dimmacaron. Now everyone knows this guy. He did get a points increase, which is why I believe you should only have 1 in your list. You should never have 2. He's too expensive at 2, and mainly your buffs are going to go on to 1. You need them on 1 because again he has that toughness 7, and again what we keep telling about, that toughness 7 is not good enough. But what we can do is we can put a 4-up invulnerable save on him. We can make him 5-up feel no pain. These are things that we stick on this guy. We fire him forward and he can be very tanky because of those buffs. A second one is just going to fall apart without the buffs needed on him. And because you can't hide him, that is a real weak link. So do not take 2. 1 is your magic number now, 100%. But 1 still has a place and he still can do a huge amount of damage. And he's a great, great addition to your Crusher list. Then moving into our heavy supports, we have got the Barbed Huragil. So the Barbed Huragil, not the Barbed Huragil, the Scythed Huragil. He's a great unit, super powerful at running in and doing some massive damage in combat, but also the Flamer that he has is very, very powerful as well because it gives us a bit of horde stability. It gives us the ability to deal with multiple large units if we need to, because that 3d6 can do a lot of damage. So having a Flamer is very, very useful and something that I wouldn't want to lose. And he's got the toughness 8, he's got lots of wounds, he's a great unit, so really, really like him and value him in the army. And then the other heavy support slot we have got a Tyrannifex, and the Tyrannifex has got the acid spray. Again, we've got another flamer, so we've got 2 heavy duty flamers. The acid spray can also do some damage to higher value targets because it's D3 damage. I can also put the +1 damage to make it even nastier. So he can do an awful lot of work, and if he stands still, he's shooting that twice. To get those guys into the midfield is really scary for your opponent. Again, both toughness 8, super resilient tanky monsters. And then what we have is we have our flyer, which is the harpy. And again, harpy, toughness 6, not great. But what the harpy needs to do is the harpy needs to go out and it needs to get us early board pressure. It needs to be able to grab objectives quickly and effectively. And if your opponent hasn't deployed correctly, you have the opportunity to potentially do some character sniping with the a mortal wound stratagem, which will allow him to charge in and potentially take out a small valuable target. So he has some massive utility in the list, but most of the time it's for that early board, grab an objective, apply some early pressure. 2 of them, again, what you're starting to do is investing too many points. on units that are fairly lightweight and that will die early. The other unit that of course we've got that we can't miss out but is easily forgotten about is the Maliceptor. Now the Maliceptor plays a huge part in this army, and the reason why he is so key is because he allows he allows the Hive Guard to re-roll their damage. Now into the current meta that we're playing into battle suits, we're playing into custodies, we are playing into Thick City, we're playing into other Crusher, Stampede and other Tyranid lists. We're playing into a lot of armies that have multiple wounds. To have something where it's rolling a D3 for damage can be so swingy. Having that reroll damage will save you every single game. It is invaluable, and I absolutely promise you, if you are not taking a Maliceptor, you are doing it wrong. I can't stress that enough. He is so powerful with those Hive Guard, and seeing you're spending so many points on those Hive Guard, you need to make sure they do all the work, and I will spend that 170 points every day additional to have that Malicept in there. He also provides a couple of other really useful jobs. He also means that if you get alpha struck, then you can do your -1 strength stratagem, and you can cluster around him with your deployment, which is what I quite often do. So if you've got drop pods of melters coming in from long fangs that I've had happen to me, that can really neuter that, particularly as again you're speccing into that toughness 8. With that -1 strength, you can really hurt almost any army that comes at you. So he's a really valuable piece, but also what he's great at, he has a very reliable cast, which we'll come into in a minute, but he gets +1 to cast. So it gives you another psychic bonus there to have another psyker in there. And that's the list. I think it comes to 1,999, so 1 point under. Couple of other things to remember, as we said about the Hive Tyrant having the Chapter Master reroll, if you like, for making the Hive Guard reroll. He also has the D3 additional attacks for himself to make him even scarier. I prefer to go that way. The potential is, depending on what your meta is and what you feel that you need to do, you can go into the redeploy as a second Warlord trait. That also is quite good. So you have to bear in mind what works best for you. But that brings up the list. Now, let's talk about how it functions on the board, because that's really important as well. So let's talk about secondaries to start off with. And this army scores secondaries so well, which might be a bit of a surprise for you, but it absolutely does. So the first one you will almost always take is Stranglehold. Stranglehold is super reliable. We've got quite a lot of speed with the Swarm Lord's double move and the Harpy's amazing speed out of the gate. You've got Stranglehold guaranteed. I don't remember a game that I haven't pretty much scored maximum points on Stranglehold. It's so reliable, because what you're doing quite often, almost every turn, is you're spending a CP to make a unit objective secure, and then getting a unit on an objective. So even if your opponent's taking it, quite often you're easily taking it back off them for a Stranglehold. So you very rarely fail to get your points on Stranglehold. So you're always taking Stranglehold, and it works amazingly well. Second up, you want to take grind on almost every game, because you're very resilient and you will kill more than they kill of you. So there's very few occasions where that's not the case. The Custodes game is probably one of the other ones that you would say maybe you'd avoid that in that matchup, but more often than not you're going to take the grind. It always works for me. I find it super valuable as a real stable secondary. Then the last one, I will almost always go for Psychic Interrogation. Going back to that Maliceptor, he will basically be that job. So he moves forward in the first turn, sits behind a wall, generally within range of a character, because they're very rare that they need to bring the characters forward for some reason, and they'll have enough to do that. You can just get that. It's easy points, and I almost always max on it. If they've got a lot of psychic defense, then you maybe don't want to take it. But more often than not, at the moment, psychic heavy armies are not a huge thing in the meta. So I find it pretty reliable. Yes, there are ways to stop it, and you've got to make that risk at the beginning of the game. But I find it works so well. The other one that potentially you can take is then you take a killing one, so you can take things like Big Game Hunter on other armies that have big stuff. You can take Assassinate from time to time as well, because you are going to be in their face, you are going to be hunting them down. So there are other options, but on the whole for me, I will almost always take Stranglehold, Grind them down, and Psychic Interrogation. And I very rarely don't get almost maximum points on them, so I find them super easy. As far as primary, we're very, very good at primary, believe it or not, because actually being able to make a unit objective secure, but on top of that, to have every big model in your army count as that amount of wounds, it's so easy to take objectives. It's so easy to take ball control because you've got so much speed. So it works really, really well. And I found that it's an incredible list. It has absolutely layers. So you've got stuff at the back that's really hard hitting, that's hard to interact with. You've got some stuff that's really steadily moves up the board, which is resilient, which can control objectives. You've got stuff that can get in the opponent's face very quickly, so the Dimmacaron. So for me, the Dimmacaron generally, if I can get him through to turn 2 without dying, I've won the game, almost always. If he dies, sometimes you're in a game, but often what he happens doing is he springs up, he double moves, so he moves 24 inches. You can do onslaught if you need to, but generally 24 inches. He's then charging in, he's then killing almost everything. He's got a 4+ invulnerable save by that point and a 5 up feel no pain. So then in return, he just struggles to die. You can put transhuman on him, he just doesn't die, or if he does die, he takes every bit of shooting and you're still in a game. If he doesn't die, as I said, it's game over. And he just starts that ball rolling on that grind because they just struggle to kill more than one thing, and bides the rest of your army time to really take the middle board. Quite often I'm finding I'm pinning my opponent back into their deployment zone so quickly because it's such an aggressive, nasty list to play against. So it takes primaries really, really well. It's super resilient, and it's great. So there are other Cruster Stampede lists out there that are also good. I've seen the Hive Tyrant now come into play as a secondary, but for me, it's just his lack of resilience in the second one. So yes, he's quick, so that's great. Yes, you can make him also pretty killy as well, and the speed is definitely something that I've looked at. But ultimately, he's just really easy to kill. Really, really easy to kill. You can focus him down and he dies just like that. I'd much rather have toughness 8 monsters that are easy to hide, that take that to the middle board, because on the whole you just generally want to throw all your buffs onto one unit, which is Dimmacaron, who charges in and does mass damage while the rest of your army takes objectives for the first turn. By the time you get to second turn, you've got multiple options of what you spring in for the second line of attack. So I don't think that he's a great choice personally. I've seen people have success with him, but for me, no. If you see Cruster Stampedes without the Maliceptor, I question, because they're just not doing it right. Because again, you need Hive Guard to really maximise our damage output and to give you something that will shoot all game long without any worries whatsoever. So again, Maliceptor absolutely key. So the other little introduction that might be interesting going forward as we face into a very heavy Tau meta is we could potentially look at the Malanthrope as a good option, and I would like to get him in the list, but I think the list is so perfect it's almost impossible to find space for him. I don't want to lose the Harpy because I don't want to lose that opportunity to guarantee me points for Stranglehold first turn. Definitely don't want to take the Maliceptor out, and if I take out one of the killers, i.e. like the T-Fex or the Tyranids, I'm starting to lose a bit of that oppressive strength as it comes forward. So I find it quite difficult to find space for him personally, but he's definitely a consideration if the meta really, really turns heavy into that oppressive Tau shooting and we're finding we're just getting blown off the table. That -1 to hit from the Malanthrope combined with the Maliceptor is maybe something that we want to look into. But at the moment, currently, I believe this is the most well-rounded, strongest, most flexible army that you can build from Cruster Stampede. It moves well, it shoots well, it attacks well, it psychics well, it takes objectives well, it takes secondaries objectives well. It's everything that you need from a really effective list. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you're excited about all the new Tyranid stuff coming, we've got the new codex. If you've hung around this long, we will be doing all the new tactics, all the new breakdown of the codex I don't do rumour videos on the whole. I know there's loads of leaks out there. We tend to wait until we actually have the stuff, but I can guarantee you that it will be the best Tyranid content out there. So make sure you come back and check us out real soon for some more amazing Tyranid content. But thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Aceface and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.